figure out who you are. It all starts with, what am I bringing to the table, and who's the authentic me, and how do I show up in this business? What's my contribution to the real estate business?
We have an amazing episode planned for you today. We have Chris Abazis today here with us. Hi, Chris.
Hi. I think it all starts with language, right? Like, our reality exists inside our language and our ability to name things and say things, right? And it all comes down to knowing what to say, how to say, and then, of course, communicating it to enough people. So I hate the word scripts. Like, people that know me, it's like, I hate when, like, hey, do you have a good script for that? Because what I'm really interested in is a conversation, right? And, the word con, meaning with, right? Latin for with, is like with somebody, right? So asking great questions, really becoming a better listener. And that's all embedded in our language, right? So how we say things to people, how we influence them, our ability to listen and speak back to people in their language. We talk about some NLP principles. And so that's really, I'm a student of linguistics, of language patterns and things like that. And I say everything starts with how to say something. And if you can get really, really good at saying stuff, you'll be exceedingly successful. I mean, we look at people like Oprah Winfrey, right? She just got really, really good at asking great questions. And these are kind of micro distinctions we're talking about between her and somebody else that's asking questions that's not as successful. So I think it's a real important thing to focus on, right? What makes a great question is one that causes someone to think in a different direction, right? So there's different, and there's a book by Dorothy Leeds called The 7 Powers of Questions. So I'll give references and stuff like that, and that tells you about different kinds of questions and the powers of them. And so there's different reasons to ask questions. And so when we're talking about if we're calling a for sale by owner, you're clearly calling someone that's got a particular filter about a real estate professional calling them. So if they're listing on their own, what are some things that they're probably thinking? I mean, we can assume that they're probably thinking that they don't need a real estate agent, that they don't want to deal with a salesperson, that they don't want to pay a commission, all these things that we always hear. So it's really about, like, on that level, on the point of first contact, it's about getting them to think in a different direction and kind of create a new possibility that they didn't know existed. And we get there by kind of asking them questions that they can't say no to sometimes. Yeah, it's also a pattern interrupter, right? Like my buddy once told me, that's also a student of language. He said, Chris, I've met a lot of famous people in my life and I've connected with a lot of them. And the reason why he was able to connect is because everybody asks him all the same questions, but he'll like ask them like a great question that gets him, like, hey, that's a great question. And that's memorable. So even, we're not talking about famous people, but on a lower scale, there's people that you come in contact with every day. It could be someone online at the grocery store. It could be a client, right? It could be someone that you're just sitting next to on the bus or train. You never know. And I think it's important to have approach everything with a sense of curiosity instead of judgment, and just have these conversations with people and see be excited about. I don't know what I don't know, and everybody's perspective is different. We have to address people. When we ask these questions, we're trying to uncover and discover what people's filters are, and then we communicate to them through their filters, because we don't all see things the same way. And that's where people have conflict and confrontations. I think great questions is kind of when you get someone to think in a different direction that they didn't know existed, like we were talking about before, is, well, if, what I'm hearing, so I get that you're selling on your own and you probably don't want to sign anything. So if there's a way for me to help you sell your house, and you didn't have to sign anything, and the commission didn't come from your proceeds, would you want to know more about that? If that was a possibility, was it worth the conversation? And that's it. It's like, well, let's get together and talk more about that. In our language and influencing, that's a degree of leadership. So, and I always say it starts with personal leadership. Okay. So it's like being able to be accountable to yourself, to be able to identify in your life what's important, the actions necessary to take to get there. And then thinking to yourself, what do I need in my life that I don't have? Who do I need in my life that I don't have? What's the missing link in order for me to get from where I am to where I want to be? Personal development, educating yourself, reading, getting mentored and coached by people. I think that's all huge. And that's personal leadership. No matter who you are, there's going to be a time in your life where you need to kind of exhibit some leadership qualities, even in your personal life. When we launched my office, and I hired a great receptionist, and she was with me from the beginning. And I hired a few people, and I started to see there was talented people around me that deserved things. So even though I said, you know what, I'm good, I don't necessarily need to, I'm good, I don't need to build a bigger organization for me, I felt like I owed it to my people, because we all have a friend that's, like works at Starbucks, that's exceedingly talented. So if my third evolution was to create opportunities for other people, right? So now I wanted to build businesses and create opportunities for other people, because why not? If we have a social responsibility to create opportunities for those around us, if we're capable of doing it. So even on the small level, leadership in working with our clients, influencing our buyers, right? Guiding our sellers in the right direction, our colleagues, right? Being an example, and not only being an example, having a level of influence where, people are like, I'm attracted to that. I want to be in alignment with that. That's how I work. As I got busier and busier and we all have only so much time in a day. And it's leverage that helps us get to the next level. Leverage comes in three forms: systems, how you do things, right? Or processes, right? So how do we do this thing, right? Then there's tools. What do I do it with? And then there's people. Who's doing it? And that's the most powerful form of leverage. It's also the most taxing, emotionally, requires the most leadership, and is the most expensive, right? So we always say, let's start with systems and tools. A lot of real estate people, even you guys out there that are new, or as you're starting to get into habits, you'll realize that you do the same things every time. When you're calling a buyer lead, you ask the same questions, you do the same thing, you use the same tools, the forms, you move to schedule them to an appointment. You kind of have the same processes. When you take a new listing, what's your listing system? Okay, I put it into MLS. I, send it here. I send it there. I order postcards. I order the sign, whatever you do. I take pictures. These are all systems. Then we have like tools that make our life easier. So for example, when I decided to call FSBOs, I wanted to master it. And I started calling FSBOs, and I was dialing. I was looking them up. Back in the day when I got started, there wasn't all this technology. There was a couple of FSBO websites, or I used to cut out like the FSBO ads in a newspaper, tape them to an index card, and take notes on the index card, right? For the old school people, I remember, which is kind of funny to think, because I was a young guy back then. And then it's like I was doing that, making appointments, and then you ask the question. Here's the leveraging question. Here's super important that could help you. Whenever you find yourself doing something that is not dollar productive, or that you don't enjoy doing, or where you've hit a ceiling, ask yourself, what system, tool, or person do I not have in my world that if I did, I wouldn't be doing this thing right now? So I started to realize, man, I wish there was a way I can make more phone calls. Then, you find a service like REDX. Oh, you mean you give me all the data up front every day, new, fresh in my inbox? Oh, you mean I could search specific data? Wonderful. So now I have the data. I don't have to go searching for it. That saves me time. That leverage takes me to the next level. So now I'm using REDX and dialing, able to make so many appointments an hour. And I'm like, man, I'm really maxed out here. What system, tool, or person you know what? There's a tool, there's a dialer, an auto dialer. Wow. So now I can bring an auto dialer. Now I can make even more phone calls, without having to dial the phone. And that's another form of leverage. Then eventually you get to a point where you're completely leveraged at systems and tools. And if you desire to grow from that point, you're like, great, I have these things built, but now it's going to be easy for me to bring someone into my organization and say, okay, look, here's how I do things. Here's how I answer the phone. Here's how I manage the CRM. Here's how you work REDX. Here's how you order, manage a listing. Because 80% of what we do in the world of real estate, or in business in general, is really administrative. It could be done by, somebody great that makes $15 to $20 an hour. It really could, right? So that's what happens. And I think that's the biggest thing that people miss. And then the dichotomy is that most real estate people are doers, or nobody can do it as good as me. It's going to take too long to show someone else how to do it, right? So if we had the foresight and we kind of put our systems together, we documented them, had an operations manual, made training videos and things, it'd be so much easier to leverage that out. So what I would tell new people is pay attention to what you do as if you're going to have to teach someone else how to do it someday, right? And many of my clients, they're like, they hit a ceiling, it's too late. Oh my God, I don't have time to hire someone. Great, we have systems for hiring people. Oh, now I got to teach them how to do things. Well, as you teach them, get them to document it, get them to do videos. That way you'll have a training program in place. You'll have all these things documented and systematized. And we don't think about that. We just think about, where's my next conversation? Where's my next appointment? My next listing, my next buyer, right?
Yeah.
So consider that as you move forward.